The stars had always been kind to Captain Seleth. For 30 cycles, she had sailed the black ocean between worlds, studying nebulae and mapping dead moons. She had never fired a weapon in anger. She had never needed to. Now, as she watched 17 warships close around her crippled vessel, like predators circling wounded prey, she understood that kindness meant nothing in the dark. The gentle dawn was dying. Seleth could feel it in the way the deck plates vibrated wrong, could see it in the flickering emergency lights that painted her bridge in shades of red and orange. The Krix raiders had hit them without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel right on top of them. 3 shots. That was all it took. 3 shots from their ugly black ships, and 400 years of Valyrian engineering became a broken thing, tumbling through empty space. Seleth gripped her command chair with thin, delicate fingers. Her skin glowed a soft blue when she was calm. Right now, it pulsed with rapid flashes of white and yellow. Fear. Terror. Every Valyrian on the bridge was doing the same, their bodies betraying emotions they could not hide. "Captain," her first officer said. His name was Veth, and he had served with her for 12 cycles. His voice was steady, but his skin flashed the same fearful colors as everyone else. "Life support will fail in 6 hours, possibly less." Seleth nodded slowly. She already knew this. The Krix had targeted their atmospheric processors with cruel precision. They wanted the Valyrians alive but desperate. Desperate people made poor decisions. Desperate people surrendered. "How many aboard?" she asked, though she knew this answer too. 412 souls, Veth replied, including the nursery pod. The nursery pod. 47 younglings, some barely old enough to speak. They were on this mission because the Gentle Dawn was supposed to be safe. A science vessel studying mineral compositions in the Kepler expanse. No danger, no risk. Their parents had waved goodbye at the station, promising to see them soon. Seleth closed her eyes. The Krix were slavers. Everyone knew what happened to beings who fell into their claws. The adults would be worked to death in their mines, or sold to the fighting pits. The younglings would face worse, much worse. "Have they made contact?" she asked. "Yes, Captain. They are demanding our surrender. They want us to lower our shields and allow boarding parties." "And if we refuse?" Veth's skin went dark for a moment, a Valyrian expression of grief. "They say they will breach our hull, section by section, until nothing remains but the nursery pod. They say younglings are more valuable when they are alone." Seleth felt something cold settle in her chest. The Krix were not making empty threats. They had done this before to other species. The Galactic Council had records of their atrocities going back centuries, and yet nobody stopped them. Nobody could. The Krix were too strong, too numerous, too willing to fight and die and kill. "We have no weapons that can harm them," Veth continued. "Our escort vessel was destroyed in the first attack. We have no allies within range. No one is coming." He was right. Seleth knew he was right. The Valyrians were a peaceful species. They believed in diplomacy, in understanding, in finding common ground with all beings. They had joined the Galactic Council specifically because it promised protection from exactly this kind of situation. But the Council was hundreds of light years away, and the Krix were here, now. Seleth thought of the younglings. She thought of their large, trusting eyes. She thought of the promises she had made to their parents. "There is one option," she said quietly. Veth looked at her. His skin flickered with confusion, then understanding. Then fear again. "Captain, no. The Council has forbidden it." "The Council is not here. But the Deathworlders, the stories about them." Seleth had heard the stories. Everyone had. Humanity. The species from the high-gravity hell called Earth. A world of crushing pressure, extreme temperatures, deadly radiation, and predators everywhere. The beings who evolved there were monsters. They had to be. Nothing soft or gentle could survive such a place. The Galactic Council had contacted humanity 50 cycles ago and immediately quarantined their entire solar system. The Deathworlders were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent. They solved problems with force. They ate the flesh of other creatures. They had 1,000 words for ways to kill, and only a handful for ways to make peace. Contact with humanity was restricted. Any species caught communicating with the Terrans faced severe punishment. But punishment required surviving long enough to face it. "Send a signal," Seleth ordered. "Captain, we do not even know if they will respond. We do not know what they will do if they come. They might be worse than the Krix." Seleth looked at the view screen. The Krix warships were moving closer now, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. They looked like insects, like something that existed only to consume and destroy. "If we do nothing, we die," she said. "If we surrender, we face fates worse than death. The humans are an unknown. An unknown is better than a certainty." Veth stared at her for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. "All frequencies?" he asked. "All frequencies, including the restricted bands. Make sure they hear us." Veth turned to the communication station and began working. Seleth watched the Krix ships and tried to slow her racing hearts. The stories about humanity were terrifying. They spoke of beings who could run for days without rest, who could heal from wounds that would kill any other species, who felt no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. But the stories also said something else, something that might have been propaganda or might have been truth. They said that humans protected the weak. Seleth did not know if this was real. She did not know if the Deathworlders would even hear their signal, let alone respond to it. She was gambling 400 lives on rumor and desperation. The signal pulsed outward into the void, carrying their location, their situation, their plea for help. Somewhere in the darkness, Seleth prayed something was listening, something that hated slavers more than it frightened her. The younglings in the nursery pod continued their lessons, unaware that their fate now rested on the response of beings from a world that made nightmares seem tame. Seleth sat in her command chair and watched the Krix ships circle. Admiral Wei Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the signal came through. She was sitting in her quarters aboard the TCS Inevitable Consequence, a battleship that weighed more than some moons. The ship was ugly by galactic standards. All human warships were ugly. They had sharp angles, exposed weapon batteries, and hulls covered in burn marks and radiation scoring. They looked like they had been built by someone who expected to die in every fight and simply did not care. This was, in many ways, accurate. Chen was 62 years old. She had gray hair cut short against her skull and a face that rarely smiled. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and when she looked at something, she really looked at it. People who served under her said that Admiral Chen could see through walls, through lies, through everything that stood between her and the truth. Right now she was looking at a cup of coffee and thinking about nothing in particular. Then her communication officer's voice came through the speaker in her room. "Admiral, we have received a distress signal on the restricted bands. Origin point is the Kepler Expanse. It appears to be a Valurian science vessel." Chen set down her coffee. "Read it to me." "They are reporting 17 Krix warships. Their vessel is disabled, and life support is failing. They have 412 souls aboard, including a nursery pod with 47 younglings. They are requesting immediate assistance from any vessel in range." Chen was already standing. She moved to her personal terminal and pulled up the star charts. The Kepler Expanse was 4 hours away at maximum speed. The Valurians had maybe 6 hours of air left. "Patch me through to Fleet Command Channel," she said. "Yes, Admiral." A moment later, Chen's voice was reaching every captain in the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 47 warships, each one crewed by humans who had trained their entire lives for war. Each one carrying weapons that the Galactic Council had tried to ban 17 times. "All ships," Chen said. "Now." She did not need to explain. Every captain in the fleet had access to the same distress signal. Every captain could see the same numbers. 17 Krix warships, 400 civilians, 47 children. Within 3 minutes, 47 human warships had engaged their faster-than-light drives. The stars stretched and blurred, and the fleet vanished from normal space like it had never existed. In her ready room, Chen pulled up everything the Terran Confederation knew about the Krix. They were an insectoid species from a world called HFY Prime. They had 6 limbs, compound eyes, and mandibles that could bite through steel. Their society was built on conquest and slavery. They raided other species for labor, for resources, for entertainment. The Galactic Council had condemned them many times. The Council had imposed sanctions, sent diplomatic envoys, issued strongly worded statements. The Krix had ignored all of it. They knew that the Council would never actually fight them. The Council was too civilized for that. Humanity had not joined the Galactic Council. Chen scrolled through the intelligence reports. The Krix had raided human colony worlds twice in the past 5 years. Both times, they had hit isolated settlements, taken prisoners, and fled before the fleet could respond. Both times, they had left behind enough evidence for humans to see what they did to their captives. Chen had seen the reports. She had seen the images. She had attended the memorial services for the colonists who were never found. She had spent 3 years hunting the Krix, waiting for them to make a mistake, waiting for them to stay in one place long enough for her to find them. Now they had. She opened a channel to her fleet captains. Their faces appeared on her screen, arranged in neat rows. Some were young, barely 30. Others were older than her. All of them had the same expression. Hard eyes, set jaws, hands that did not shake. "You have all seen the distress signal," Chen said. "A civilian vessel, 400 souls, children aboard. The Krix are treating this as sport. They expect no resistance, no rescue, no consequences." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "They are wrong." Captain Rodriguez of the TCS Fury spoke first. "Rules of engagement, Admiral?" "No survivors," Chen said. "No escape pods, no mercy. These raiders have taken our people twice. They have done things that I will not describe on an open channel. Today, we remind them why the Galactic Council fears us." Captain Okonkwo of the TCS Righteous Anger raised her hand. "What about the Valurians? They contacted us on restricted bands. The Council will know." "The Council can file a complaint," Chen replied. "I will worry about paperwork after those children are safe." No one else had questions. No one needed clarification. They had served with Chen for years. They knew how she operated. They knew what was expected. "We arrive in the Kepler expanse in approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes, Chen said. "When we exit FTL, we will not stop to negotiate. We will not issue warnings. We will not ask questions. We will fire on every Krix vessel until there are no Krix vessels remaining. Is that understood?" 47 voices answered as one. "Yes, Admiral." Chen nodded once and closed the channel. She returned to her coffee, but it had gone cold. She did not bother reheating it. Instead, she walked to the viewport in her quarters and looked out at the strange blur of faster-than-light travel. Somewhere ahead, 400 Valurians were waiting to die. Somewhere ahead, 17 Krix warships were circling like carrion birds, enjoying the terror of their prey. They had no idea what was coming. Chen thought about the colonists who had been taken, the ones who were never found, the reports of what happened to them in the Krix labor camps, the survivors they had rescued, broken in body and mind. She thought about the 47 younglings aboard the Gentle Dawn. The Valurians were fragile, peaceful creatures, They glowed soft colors and studied stars. They had probably never hurt anyone in their entire history as a species, and the Cricks were hunting them for sport. Chen felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. It was not anger, not exactly. It was something older, something that had kept humanity alive on a world that wanted them dead, something that made them run down prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Patience, focus, the absolute certainty that the hunt would end one way. The Cricks wanted to meet humanity in battle. Admiral Wei Chen intended to grant their wish. Commander Vreketh of the Cricks Dominion was enjoying himself. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer of Hope, and watched the Valurian vessel drift helplessly before him. His compound eyes could see every detail of its beautiful crystalline hull, now cracked and leaking atmosphere. His mandibles clicked together in what his species considered laughter. The Valurians were so easy, so soft. They had no weapons worth mentioning, no armor worth penetrating, no spirit worth breaking. They surrendered or they died, and either way, they made excellent slaves. Commander, his sensor officer reported, the prey vessel's life support will fail within 4 hours. Their communications have gone silent. They have likely accepted their fate. Vreketh clicked his mandibles again. Let them stew a little longer. The fear makes them more obedient when we finally board. Have the slave handlers prepare the processing chambers. I want the younglings separated from the adults immediately upon capture. Yes, Commander. Vreketh settled back into his command cradle. This raid would bring him great honor among his clutch. 400 slaves, including nearly 50 younglings. Young Valurians were worth 10 times their weight in credits on the black markets. Their glowing skin made them popular as exotic pets among the galaxy's wealthy elite. He was imagining the price he would receive when his sensor officer made a strange sound. It was not a word. It was something between a chirp and a scream, a noise that Cricks made only when they were truly deeply afraid. Vreketh snapped his head toward the sensor station. What is it? The sensor officer did not answer immediately. His compound eyes were locked on his display, and his chitin had gone pale. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Gravitational anomalies, Commander. Multiple. Very close. How many? The officer paused, rechecked his readings, and made that terrible sound again. They are among us. Vreketh did not understand. Ships did not exit faster than light travel among an enemy fleet. The calculations were too difficult, the margins too thin. One small error would put your ship inside another ship, destroying both instantly. No sane species would attempt such a thing. Then the stars twisted. All around the Cricks formation, reality tore itself apart. Points of light stretched into lines, lines became circles, and circles became ships. Human ships. Terran warships, appearing in the spaces between Cricks vessels like they had always been there. Vreketh stared at the view screen and felt something he had not experienced in 30 cycles of raiding. Fear. The human ships were ugly. They were brutal, angular things with no grace or elegance. Their hulls were covered in scars and burns, and strange markings that might have been words or might have been warnings. Their weapons were not hidden behind decorative panels like civilized ships. They were exposed, pointed outward, ready to fire at anything that moved. They looked like they had been built by predators, by something that did not care about beauty or diplomacy or anything except killing. Commander, his weapons officer shouted, what are your orders? Should we target the newcomers? Vreketh opened his mandibles to respond. He never got the chance. The humans fired first. Every Terran ship opened up at the same instant, as if they shared a single mind. Beams of coherent light sliced through the darkness. Kinetic rounds the size of ground vehicles crossed the space between ships in fractions of a second. Missiles with intelligent guidance systems found gaps in Crick's armor that should not have existed. The Crick's vessel closest to Vreketh, the Claw of Conquest, simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of metal and fire. 300 Crick's warriors, gone in less than a second. "Return fire!" Vreketh screamed. "All ships, return fire!" But the Crick's ships were designed for raiding, not for battle. They had weapons meant to disable civilian vessels, not to fight warships. Their shots splashed against human shields and did nothing. Their missiles were intercepted by point defense systems that tracked and destroyed them before they could reach their targets. The humans did not stop firing. On the gentle dawn, Captain Seleth watched the battle with her mouth hanging open. She had expected many things when she sent the distress signal. She had expected no response. She had expected a single ship, maybe two, arriving hours too late. She had expected the Deathworlders to be slow, confused, uncertain. She had not expected this. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, each ship covering the others, each weapon finding its target. The Crick's formation, which had seemed so powerful moments ago, was being torn apart like paper in a storm. "By the stars," Veth whispered beside her. "They are not fighting. They are executing." He was right. This was not a battle. Battles had two sides trading blows, adapting, struggling. This was something else. This was what happened when a predator caught prey that could not run. The Crick ships tried to scatter, but the humans had anticipated this. Every avenue of escape was blocked by a Terran warship. Every attempt to flee was met with overwhelming fire. The darkness of space filled with explosions, each one marking the death of another raider. Vreketh watched 5 of his ships die in less than a minute. Then 7 more. Then 3 more. His crews were not even managing to scratch the human vessels. Their shields were too strong. Their weapons were too fast. Their tactics were too perfect. "Commander, we must retreat," his first officer shouted. "To where?" Vreketh demanded. "They are everywhere." It was true. The humans had not just arrived in force. They had arrived with a plan. They had positioned themselves to ensure that no Crick ship could escape. This was not a rescue mission. This was a hunt, and the Cricks were the prey. Vreketh's flagship shuddered as a kinetic round tore through its secondary hull. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. His ship was dying around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. On the bridge of the inevitable consequence, Admiral Chen watched the battle with cold satisfaction. Her fleet was performing exactly as planned. The Cricks had been caught completely off guard, and now they were paying the price. 12 enemy vessels destroyed, her tactical officer reported. 5 more heavily damaged and losing power. The remaining vessels are attempting to flee. Chen nodded once. "Do not let them." She had positioned her fastest destroyers at the system's edge for exactly this reason. The Cricks would find no escape. No survival. On the gentle dawn, the Valurians watched the last Crick ship explode in a ball of fire. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. 17 warships reduced to debris. The humans had not lost a single vessel. Captain Seleth sat in her command chair and tried to understand what she had just witnessed. The Deathworlders had come. They had responded to her desperate signal, crossed light years in hours, and destroyed an entire Crick's fleet without hesitation, without negotiation, without mercy. She did not know whether to be relieved or terrified. Both, she decided. Both was appropriate. 3 Crick's ships tried to run. Commander Vreketh watched from his damaged bridge as the Fang of Conquest, the Silent Predator, and the Endless Hunger broke formation and fled toward the edge of the system. They were his fastest vessels, commanded by his most experienced captains. If anyone could escape the human fleet, it would be them. "Follow them," Vreketh ordered. "Maximum speed. We must reach the jump point before—" "Commander." His sensor officer's voice was flat, dead. "Look." Vreketh looked at the tactical display. His compound eyes went wide. The humans had already thought of this. 3 Terran destroyers were waiting at the system's edge. They had been there the entire time, sitting silently in the dark, watching the jump points. They were not moving to intercept the fleeing Crick ships. They were simply waiting, like predators crouched beside a watering hole. The Fang of Conquest reached them first. Its captain tried to change course, to find another escape route. The human destroyer adjusted its position with a small, almost casual thrust of its engines. Then it fired. The Fang of Conquest died in a single shot. The silent predator saw what happened and tried to surrender. Its captain broadcast on all frequencies, offering to lay down weapons, to submit to capture, to give any information the humans wanted. His voice was desperate, pleading. Vreketh had never heard a Crix beg before. The humans did not respond. They simply fired again. The endless hunger made it farther than the others. Its captain was clever, using debris fields and the system's asteroid belt for cover. For almost 15 minutes, it seemed like he might actually escape. Then a human frigate appeared behind him. It had been tracking him the entire time, matching his course changes, predicting his movements. It fired a spread of missiles that overwhelmed his point defense systems. The endless hunger broke apart in a series of secondary explosions. No survivors. On the bridge of the inevitable consequence, Admiral Chen watched the final fleeing ship die. Her face showed no emotion. This was not cruelty. This was not revenge. This was simply what needed to be done. "All fleeing vessels have been neutralized," her tactical officer reported. "The remaining Crick ships are either destroyed or critically damaged. We have achieved complete fleet annihilation." "Survivors?" Chen asked. "Some escape pods were launched from the damaged vessels. Standard Crick's evacuation protocol." Chen considered this for a moment. The Galactic Council had rules about escape pods. Even in war, you were supposed to rescue enemy survivors. It was considered civilized, humane. But the Cricks had never followed those rules. They destroyed escape pods from their victims without hesitation. They took prisoners not to ransom them, but to enslave them. They had made it very clear that they did not consider other species worthy of mercy. "Ignore the pods," Chen said quietly. "Focus on the remaining active vessels." Her officers did not question the order. They had all seen the reports from the colony raids. They knew what the Cricks did to their captives. Some debts could not be paid with surrender. Vreketh's flagship, the Devourer of Hope, was the last Crick ship still capable of movement. Its engines were damaged, its weapons were offline, and most of its crew was dead. But it can still fly, barely, and Vreketh intended to use that. "Set course for the Valurian vessel," he commanded. His remaining bridge crew stared at him. "Commander?" "The prey ship, the one we were hunting. It is still disabled. If we can reach it, if we can board it, we will have hostages. The humans value life. Everyone knows this. They will not fire on us if we have their precious civilians." It was a desperate plan, a coward's plan. But Vreketh was not too proud to be a coward if it meant survival. The Devourer of Hope limped toward the gentle dawn. Captain Seleth saw the damaged Crick's flagship approaching on her sensors. Her skin flashed with renewed fear. The battle was over, the Crick's fleet was destroyed, but this last wounded predator was coming for her. "They mean to board us," Veth said. "Use us as shields against the humans. Can we stop them?" Veth shook his head. "We have no weapons, no shields, nothing." Seleth looked at the view screen. The Crick's ship was getting closer. Behind it, The human fleet was repositioning. They must have realized what Vreketh was planning. Then a new ship appeared between the Devourer of Hope and the Gentle Dawn. It was a human frigate, one of the smallest warships in the Terran fleet. Its hull was painted with words in a language Seleth did not recognize. Later, she would learn that the ship was called the TCS Spite. The Devourer of Hope opened fire with every weapon it had left. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds slammed into the Spite's shields, overloading them in seconds. The frigate's hull buckled and burned. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. Secondary explosions rippled along its length. But it did not move. The Spite held its position between the Crick ship and the Valyrian vessel, taking hit after hit, dying by inches. Its weapons kept firing, even as its systems failed. Its crew kept fighting, even as their ship fell apart around them. 17 direct hits. That was how many the Spite absorbed before its return fire finally cracked the Devourer of Hope in half. The Crick's flagship broke apart in a silent explosion. Vreketh's bridge was torn open to space. His last sight was the stars he had hunted under for 30 cycles, now staring down at him with cold indifference. Then, he was gone. On the Spite, Captain David Torres was still alive, barely. His bridge was filled with smoke and fire. Most of his crew was dead or wounded. But the Valyrian vessel was safe. The Crick's flagship was destroyed. "Admiral," he said into his damaged communication system. "Target eliminated. The civilians are secure." Chen's voice came back, steady and warm despite the static. "Good work, Captain. Medical ships are on their way. Hold on." Torres leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling of his ruined bridge. 43 of his crew were wounded. None were dead, not yet, though some would be touch and go for a while. They had won. In the void around them, 17 Crick's warships had become expanding clouds of debris. The raiders who had terrorized this sector for decades were gone, erased in a battle that had lasted less than half an hour. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the inevitable consequence and surveyed the aftermath. Her fleet had performed exactly as trained. Every captain, every crew member, every weapon system had worked together with the precision that came from years of preparation. "Casualties?" she asked. 43 wounded across the fleet, her executive officer reported. "No fatalities. The Spite took the worst of it, but Captain Torres reports his crew will survive." "And the Cricks?" "Total annihilation, Admiral. No survivors." Chen nodded once. This was not something to celebrate. It was simply something that had needed to be done. The Cricks had chosen their path when they started hunting children. They had chosen their fate when they decided that other species existed only to be preyed upon. Now that path had reached its end. "Prepare a boarding party for the Valyrian vessel," Chen said. "Medical teams, engineers, emergency supplies. Those people have been through enough. Let us make sure they survive long enough to tell the galaxy what happened here." Her officers moved to obey, and Admiral Chen turned to look out at the stars. The hunt was over. The prey had been caught. And somewhere in the galaxy, other predators would hear about what happened in the Kepler expanse. They would learn that humanity had responded to a simple distress call with complete fleet annihilation. They would learn that the Deathworlders did not negotiate with slavers, did not show mercy to those who hurt children, did not hesitate to destroy anyone who threatened the innocent. They would learn, and they would be afraid. The airlock of the Gentle Dawn opened with a soft hiss. Captain Seleth stood at the entrance, surrounded by her senior officers. They had spent the last hour preparing for this moment. They had cleaned their uniforms as best they could. They had dimmed their bioluminescent skin to calm, respectful blues. They had rehearsed what they would say, how they would stand, how they would behave. None of it seemed adequate now. The first human to step through the airlock was a woman in a gray uniform. She was shorter than Seleth had expected, with dark hair streaked with silver, and eyes that seemed to look through everything. Her movements were smooth and controlled, like a predator who had learned to hide its true nature. Behind her came others, medical technicians carrying strange equipment, engineers with toolkits, soldiers with weapons that stayed holstered but ready. They moved through the Valorian ship with careful steps, their heavy boots making the deck plates vibrate. "Captain Seleth," the woman said. Her voice was deeper than Valorian voices, and it carried without effort. "I am Admiral Wei Chen of the Terran Confederation Navy. We received your distress signal." Seleth tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She had spent 30 cycles commanding starships, speaking to diplomats and scientists and world leaders. She had never been at a loss for words. But she had also never stood before a Deathworlder who had just annihilated 17 warships like they were nothing. She finally managed. Thank you. Thank you for coming." Admiral Chen nodded once. It was a small gesture, almost casual, but it carried weight. "Your life support is failing. My engineers are already working on it. We have medical teams standing by for any wounded. Where is your nursery pod?" Seleth blinked. Of all the questions she had expected, that was not one of them. "The nursery pod? Deck 7, Section 4. The younglings are unharmed, I believe, but frightened." "Understandable." Chen turned to one of her officers. "Send a team. Non-threatening personnel. Soft voices. Children are children, regardless of species." The officer nodded and moved away. Seleth stared at the Admiral. This was the Deathworlder she had been so afraid of? This woman who immediately asked about children, who instructed her soldiers to use soft voices, who moved through a civilian vessel with the careful attention of someone who genuinely cared. "Admiral," Seleth said slowly, "I must ask. The Galactic Council has warned all species about your kind. They say that humans are violent, unpredictable, dangerous. They say that you solve all problems with force, that you know only destruction." Chen's expression did not change. "And what did you see today, Captain?" Seleth thought about it. She had seen violence, yes. She had seen 17 warships destroyed in less than 30 minutes. She had seen the human frigate throw itself between her ship and the Crick's flagship, taking hit after hit to protect strangers it had never met. "I saw force," she admitted, "but I also saw the spite, the ship that protected us. It could have retreated. It could have let the Cricks through and saved itself. Instead, it stood between us and death." "Captain Torres understood his duty," Chen said simply. "We all did." Seleth's skin flickered with confusion, with frustration, with something that might have been hope. "Why did you come? Why did you risk your ships, your people, for a species you have never met? The Council tells us that humanity cares only for itself." Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. She looked around the bridge of the gentle dawn, at the damaged systems and flickering lights, at the Valorian crew who watched her with fear and wonder in their large eyes. Then she looked back at Seleth. "You asked for help," she said. "There were children." She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, like no further explanation was needed or possible. Seleth felt something shift in her chest. She had spent her entire life believing what the Galactic Council told her about humans. Monsters, predators, Deathworlders who could not be trusted, could not be reasoned with, could not be understood. But monsters did not send medical teams to help wounded civilians. Predators did not instruct soldiers to use soft voices around frightened children. Deathworlders who could not be trusted did not throw themselves in front of plasma fire to protect strangers. "I think," Seleth said quietly, "that the Council may have been wrong about you." Chen's expression softened, just slightly. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. The Council fears what it does not understand. Humanity is different from other species, Captain. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to fight, to endure, to survive against impossible odds. The Council sees this and thinks we are dangerous. Are you not? We are very dangerous, Chen admitted, but there is something the Council does not understand about predators. We do not hunt without reason. We do not kill for sport. And when we find something worth protecting, we protect it with everything we have. She gestured at the viewport, where the debris of the Krix fleet still drifted through space. The Krix hunted your people for sport. They took children and sold them as slaves. They believed that being strong meant preying on the weak. Chen's voice grew cold, hard. They were wrong. Being strong means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It means standing between innocents and those who would harm them. It means doing what is right, even when it is difficult, even when no one will thank you for it. Seleth thought about this. She thought about the younglings in the nursery pod, who would have faced horrors she could not imagine if the humans had not come. She thought about her crew, who would have died or been enslaved if the distress signal had gone unanswered. Admiral, she said, what happens now? The Council will know that we contacted you. They will punish us? Chen shrugged. Let them try. The Terran Confederation does not answer to the Galactic Council, and after today, the Council will have to decide what it values more, its fear of humanity, or its relief that the Krix will never threaten anyone again. Before Seleth could respond, there was a commotion near the door to the nursery pod. A small Valurian youngling had wandered away from the group, drawn by curiosity. She was tiny, barely old enough to walk properly, and her skin glowed with the soft pink of innocent wonder. She had found Admiral Chen. Seleth's heart stopped. She moved to intervene, to pull the child away from the Deathworlder, to protect her from... But Chen was already kneeling. The Admiral lowered herself to the youngling's level, her movements slow and gentle. She did not reach out, did not touch, did not frighten. She simply knelt there, making herself small, making herself safe. Hello, she said softly. Her voice was completely different now. Warm, kind. Are you lost, little one? The youngling stared at her with huge eyes. Then, slowly, she reached out one tiny hand and touched Chen's face. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with colors, curiosity, wonder, trust. Chen did not pull away. She stayed perfectly still, letting the child explore, letting her see that there was nothing to fear. She is beautiful, Chen said to Seleth. What is her name? Seleth found that she could not speak. She was watching a Deathworlder, a being from a world of violence and death, kneeling gently before a child. She was watching the most feared species in the galaxy show kindness to the most vulnerable being on her ship. Her name is Veleth, she finally managed. She is my niece. Chen smiled then, a real smile, warm and genuine. Hello, Veleth. My name is Wei. My friends and I came to make sure you were safe. Are you hungry? We brought food. The youngling's skin flashed with excitement. Food was a universal language. Seleth watched the admiral of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, the woman who had just ordered the complete annihilation of an enemy fleet, hold out her hand to a child who trusted her without question. And she finally understood what the Galactic Council had gotten wrong. Humans were not monsters. They were protectors. They had always been protectors. And the galaxy had just watched them prove it. In the cycles that followed, the story of the Kepler expanse spread across known space. Species who had feared humanity began to reconsider. Species who had been victims of the Krix began to hope. The Galactic Council, faced with undeniable evidence of human compassion, found its position increasingly difficult to defend. But that was all in the future. For now, Captain Seleth stood on the bridge of her damaged ship. watching human medics tend to Valyrian wounded, watching human engineers restore life support, watching a human admiral play peekaboo with a glowing pink youngling who laughed with pure joy. The Deathworlders had answered her call, and everything was going to be different now.